Hello, all you Dominionese speakers out there, and welcome to Undeclared Bajor. This is Undeclared Bajor, the best Star Trek DS9 discussion podcast in the world. My name is Fletcher, about to say hello is Data.
Hey!
Today we're going to discuss Star Trek DS9, Season 6, Episode 9, Statistical Probabilities. Alternate title, Mutant Mayhem.
Okay.
Remember that movie?
Yes, I do. I had to see it many times.
We will be discussing spoilers up through this episode, but not after this episode. So it's safe to watch along with us if this is your first experience with Star Trek DS9. But we might spoil other stuff like Mutant Mayhem. The turtles win.
They do.
I wasn't sure about that because I kind of forgot how that movie ends. But
yeah, they defeat the giant monster mutant.
Oh
thing.
yeah, there was a giant monster. I forgot about that.
There's a lot of animals combined together.
Apparently, I need to rewatch this movie.
Not necessarily.
Oh, you think so? Anyway, so Statistical Probabilities originally aired November 24th, 1997. It's written by Renee Echevarria, story by Pam Pietroforte.
Yeah, apparently she was an intern on the show, and she's credited with this story and one other story this season, and no more IMDb entries after that. So maybe the intern thing didn't work out. I don't know.
Sure, I mean, she might have gone a different direction with her life.
Yeah.
But I was fully expecting her to be just another one of those totally mysterious story by people that we have no information about.
I mean, she's still pretty mysterious.
True. Pam, if you're out there, leave us a comment. And directed by Anson Williams, who I also have never heard of before.
You've probably seen him around. He seems to have made a career of directing a couple episodes here and there of various shows, including Sabrina the Teenage Witch, 10 episodes of Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Huh.
31 episodes of The Secret Life of the American Teenager, sorry. 9 episodes of Beverly Hills 90210. You got Melrose Place. You got Hercules and Xena, Sequest.
Oh, wow.
He directed a bunch of stuff, but you probably don't know him from his directing as much as you might know him as as Potsy from Happy Days.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Wow.
I did not make that connection at all. Directing was pretty good, I think. So.
Yeah.
Good for him. There were a couple of times I was like, this is kind of like a really cool staged scene right here. So, Sarah Lofton is not in this episode, and we were doing so well.
Not at all. Was Morn in it? I didn't notice.
I want to say yes. I think I noticed him in some of the Quark scenes, but now I'm second guessing myself. So, somewhere on Deep Space Nine, in a room that looks like a cargo bay with some beds thrown in it, 4 people we've never seen before are hanging out. One of them, a slim man in black clothes, paces around and rants manically. So a Starfleet doctor enters the room to calm the man down, and also to explain the premise of the episode.
Apparently, speaking of the room they're in, during pre-production, there's a lot of discussion about where should, these guys be. The script specified they were to be in the wardroom, but from a practical point of view, shooting several scenes with 5 characters in that small location was not desirable, so it was agreed to move the scenes somewhere else. And eventually Steve Oster was like, hey, why don't we try Cargo Bay?
Nice.
Because, quote, we thought we might be saying something about Starfleet's treatment of these people if we put them in a cargo bay.
Ah. So I was kind of thinking, this is kind of like a harsh place to put these people, but...
Also, in the second draft of the script, Renee Echevarria had a lengthy scene here at the beginning where Bashir finds out, gets explained the personalities of each of these people, And then eventually Eshvari's like, I mean, when we see them, we will learn their idiosyncrasies really fast, so this is probably not necessary.
Yes, show don't tell at work.
Mm.
That was kind of clever how they, didn't explain that. They just had Bashir having read about them and kind of, I don't know, it was pretty good, I thought. Yeah, so what's going on here is this ranty man and his 3 comrades are people who went through similar illegal genetic modification to what Dr. Bashir did when they were kids, with not as successful results.
Yeah.
And they now live in a fun-sounding place called the Institute.
I mean, you could blame the genetic modification, or maybe they're just like assholes or whatever.
Right.
You don't have to be genetically modified to be like a raging egomaniac.
True.
We've seen that in our real political landscape.
What? Getting political. And, yeah, I guess that's a good point. These, like, Jack could just be a total dick, completely unrelated to his genetic modifications.
Yeah.
We don't know. But yeah, the doctor has taken them to Deep Space Nine to meet Dr. Bashir, which will hopefully inspire them or something with his normal, productive life.
Look, you could be normal. Why don't you just normal? And they were like, we never thought of it that way before until we saw someone else doing it.
And what better time and place to do this than the middle of a massive war at the most strategically important and most fought over location in that war?
The Federation is like, look, if we lose these guys, is it really that big of a hit?
I think Dr. Lady is like, this is a risk I'm willing to take for a chance at a spa vacation.
Especially with Jack.
Right. So let's meet our 4 guest characters. We have Jack, the Manic Man. Think Brad Pitt from 12 Monkeys.
I guess, yeah, he's kind of Brad Pitt. According to the thing, the character of Jack is based upon Dean Moriarty, who was based on Neil Cassidy, one of the main characters from the 1951 Jack Kerouac novel On the Road, a wannabe philosopher who talks a mile a minute.
I have never read that, but...
No, I've never read it either.
I have heard of Dean Moriarty.
And then there's a quote from the guy who played Jack, Tim Ransom, which that strikes me as funny because Jack is played by Tim Ransom, and then on Star Trek Lower Decks, the first officer is Jack Ransom. So,
oh my goodness.
Coincidence? Probably.
Impossible.
But of his performance as Jack, he says, I figured he's the equivalent of a guy who drinks 40 cups of coffee a day.
Yeah, I definitely could get some of that from his performance. Okay, so also we have Patrick, an old man with emotions of a toddler. We have Serena, who is River Tam, but less talkative.
Yeah, okay, so hold on. There's from Faith Sally, who played Serena, on her performance. Okay. I was told to behave pretty much catatonic. Anson told me, there's a lot going on in your mind because you're genetically enhanced and you're brilliant, but you can't facilitate it because your body doesn't know how. I created a switch in my brain that I could turn on and off to make everything become hazy around me, so that it seemed as if an amalgam of voices and senses were coming at me, and it was that overwhelming.
Ah, so she created a switch in her brain?
That's what she says.
All right. I'm just going to assume that's some kind of acting metaphor, but...
No, literally. She, installed it. Michael Keenan, who played Patrick, says, he's essentially a child, so I played him that way. Children have instant access to their emotions, and they don't filter anything, so that's what I did.
Sure. Yeah. And finally, we have Lauren, who has no discernible impairment, but she's kind of horny, so I guess she also deserves to be locked up at the Institute.
And hates to stand up, or something.
Yeah.
Or sit. She's very... She reclines.
Although she is capable of standing up.
Yes.
And walking around.
We do discover that.
Yeah, so I don't know what her deal is, and I don't know if they ever even said her name in the episode, because I had to look it up.
Oh. Now I'm not sure. But of her performance, she says, she was described as being obsessed with Bashir and very va-va-voom. But I decided to make her a little Hannibal Lecter-ish as well. It was director Anson Williams' idea to never have Lauren stand up. The only time I ever stand was when I danced with Bashir.
Yeah. Well, also she...
also when they left to go meet Wayun or whatever.
Yeah. But, I don't know. I've known some people like Lauren, and they definitely were not in an institute. So I don't know what's going on with her, but
let's see. Apparently, she's been in another episode of Deep Space Nine. In the 5th season episode, The Ship. She played.
Oh, was she one of the red shirts who got blown up in the shuttle or the
she was
runabout?
A Benzite. So yes, she was the Benzite in the runabout.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that Benzite in the runabout. Oh wow, that's the joy of working on Star Trek.
Yep, I'm looking at her IMDb now to see if I recognize anything else. Trek Untold, a podcast series. She's like, I was on Star Trek 2 times. I'll get in on this.
Maybe we can get her on our podcast.
Power Rangers in Space for 5 episodes.
Ooh.
And 20 episodes of Power Rangers Turbo. So there you go.
She's in the Power Rangers world.
Those seem to be the highlights.
If you can't be a Star Trek regular, Power Rangers regular that'll get you some con bucks.
Oh, the guy who played Patrick has been in 3 episodes of Star Trek. Sub Rosa in The Next Generation, an episode of Voyagers called Heroes and Demons, and then this one.
Wait, Sub Rosa. That's the that's the notorious
the
grandma ghost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. He plays some sort of alien who I don't even recognize from that episode, but I guess he was down there somewhere.
So we got a nice little cast of characters here. So Lauren admires a picture of Dr. Bashir on a pad, and Jack grabs the pad and smashes it. Then he hands it to the doctor, broken glass side down,
and it cuts her hand with pads.
Yeah, I know. I assumed it was some sort of futuristic material that but whatever. But she just looks at her bloody hand. She's like, okay, I'm out of here. And goes into the hallway to hand them off to Dr. Bashir's care while I assume she spends a few weeks at a spa or something.
Good for her.
Dr. Bashir goes into the crazy person room and all the lights are off, so he turns them back on. He's read the report on all of them, so he's all up to speed. Jack asks Dr. Bashir if he's related to a certain 15th century poet, and Bashir says yes. So Jack points out that guy was a plagiarist. Which I could not find any reference to this being a real poet, so I guess it's made
good
up
to know
for the show.
They're not going to get sued by his great descendants for calling him a plagiarist,
right? You just don't want to risk it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I kind of assumed that they just opened like the Encyclopedia Britannica to the first Bashir they could find, but I guess, and maybe they did. My quick Google could not find this guy. So, but yeah, Lauren asks Bashir what kind of enhancements he has, and he says mental abilities only. So his enormous Johnson is not related to his genetic enhancement,
but also like hand-eye coordination and
right
stuff.
Yeah, but he can't do a cool backflip.
Nope.
But he does a cube root in his head and proves to everybody that he is enhanced, or as they like to say, a mutant. Then they have a conversation about the ethics of genetic enhancement. At first, Jack says there are good reasons why they're barred from certain jobs, but then he changes his position when Bashir starts talking about the eugenics wars and decides they don't deserve to get locked up. Or maybe he's in favor of having their jobs limited, but not in favor of being locked up in the institute.
Well, I thought when he said that there's good reasons or whatever, like it starts off for a second sounding genuine, and then I thought it went into like sarcastic territory where he's like, "Oh yeah, sure." I don't know.
Also, a possible interpretation. He's a crazy person, so we may never know.
Yeah.
But after this conversation, Bashir's like, "Well, I gotta bounce. I have dinner plans.
I have friends." Oh, sorry.
Right. Which seemed a little harsh and sudden, but
yeah.
We cut to dinner in someone's quarters. They're doing the after-dinner thing where they sit around in the living room talking, but there's not enough couch space, so half the people have to drag in table chairs.
That's a little bit weird.
Bashir tells everybody at the dinner party that all he could think about when meeting with the mutants was, "There but for the grace of God go I." Which, okay, let's settle down, Julian.
Well, I mean, I think it's a fair point.
Sure. Just phrased a little pretentiously, but...
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean,
in character, I guess.
The way that they talked about like his genetic engineering, it seemed like there was a guy somewhere doing this shit all the time. So, or
it seemed like there was like a planet that you just go to for your genetic engineering. So
he came out fine, and these like 5 people had issues. So who knows what happened to everyone else?
Right. So, and he even says these are the people whose parents had to reveal what they did to be able to get their kids help. So
I like Jack dissing his parents like, oh, they couldn't afford the full package? Stupid poors.
Okay, so this also sparks a discussion about the ethics of genetic engineering with this group. Worf is against it, except in the case of Dr. Bashir, because he's my friend or something.
I don't get the feeling that Worf likes Bashir that much, honestly. He's more like, oh, except for you, I guess, because you're in the room.
Right, because I have to be polite.
Yeah.
But behind your back, I talk crap about this all the time.
Worf doesn't strike me also as like the talks behind your back type person, because I can't imagine him talking to anyone about like, or caring enough to talk to anyone about Bashir. But I mean, if he's here and you start this conversation, he's going to say how he feels.
Sure. O'Brien doesn't want to exclude mutants from anything, but he does just want to limit what they can do.
Completely
those aren't
things.
Completely identical concepts.
Yeah. I do love that. It's like, no one's talking about excluding them, just excluding them.
Limiting the things we include them in.
Yeah. It's perfectly reasonable.
Sisko says, let's change the subject. How about that upcoming speech from Gul Damar? So I guess this dinner party was meant to be a speech watch party.
Yeah, seems that way.
But Dr. Bashir gets a call from Jack, who hacked into the comm system somehow, so he has to go leave and take care of that.
So this discussion immediately made me think about my favorite webcomic. It's called Girl Genius.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a steampunk thing where the conceit is that there's certain people who have what they call the spark that basically makes them like these mad scientists where they can do all this crazy, like even reality warping scientific stuff and create crazy devices and things. So there's a character in the comic who, like, when you have a bunch of people who are mad scientists all over the place, they create crazy devices and genetically engineered monstrosities and stuff, and they fight each other for dominance. That's kind of what happens. So there's a guy who is one of these sparks, but also he wants to like stop the constant war. So he starts taking over everything, and one of the things that he does is like when he conquers like this guy's territory, he'll bring this guy in and be like, "Hey, look, all this like running governments and like maintaining your people or whatever, that's hard. You just want to do the science that you want to do, right? So what if I like provide you with a place where you can do your thing?" And and so he like channels this insanity into potentially useful avenues and keeps them busy and happy instead of terrorizing the populace. And so it made this discussion in the episode makes me think of that, where it's like Starfleet should really do that. It's like, we don't want to encourage this, but also why waste the resource that we have? So let's find a thing that they could be really good at and that would be helpful to us, and just create a space where they can do that thing.
Sure.
And then I went and read in Memory Alpha, and it says in the first draft of the episode, these guys were actually a think tank that had been trained and recruited and trained by Starfleet intelligence, and they were on DS9 on like an intelligence mission they were going to operate under Bashir's supervision. And then the story called for them to be kind of like weird and neurotic, and the more you got into that, the more absurd it seemed that Starfleet was trusting these people with like a super sensitive mission. And so eventually he's like, okay, no, that's not going to work. Maybe they're here for counseling or something. And so it's funny to me that it's like almost kind of the same idea where it's like, hey, these are crazy super geniuses. Let's use them for something.
Yeah, it kind of changes the core of the episode.
Yeah, it really does, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I guess you could say it's like, okay, you can genetically engineer your kids, but they're only going to have one job. Being in our freaky, like, freak show think tank group.
Like there's an example in the comic where somebody like has enhanced their own brain to make themselves even smarter, but their head's totally weird and gigantic, and the guy's like, you would make a perfect like planner for like battle strategies and stuff. Like this plays right into
Sure.
You can see how all this moves. And I was like, see, you could find one of these crazy super geniuses who's really bad socially but is really great at like strategic planning, and then you're like, okay, you're the overall planner and these people will support you but also keep you in check. So you just stick them in places where it's not like they've been given an advantage over other people and they're getting a leg up and they're in charge of stuff. But at the same time, it's like, well, we can make use of these talents. So I feel like
Sure.
Starfleet is missing an opportunity here. Is the basic upshot.
It's like that guy from Invincible.
I never watched Invincible actually.
He has the power to open portals to other dimensions. And so he has the bright idea because like there's a dimension where like cancer has been cured, and there's like a dimension where like some other problem has been solved. So he gathers up all of himself from all these other dimensions and then puts them in a machine to put all of their knowledge into his brain so he can use all of their knowledge to solve our dimension's problems. But it goes horribly wrong and his brain turns giant.
That seems like going the long way around. Couldn't you just like, hey, write down how cancer got cured in your universe. Great, thanks.
I mean, they do kind of like a quick lampshade on that, where they're like, couldn't you just ask them stuff?
Yeah.
I was like, no, that would take too long.
Okay.
No, he was like, you need somebody who can see the whole big picture at once. Typical supervillain origin type
I mean,
thing.
yeah.
So, let's see. He has a big dick.
Right.
Oh yeah, so Dr. Bashir goes down to the mutant room. When he gets down there, they're all complaining about a high-pitched sound that I guess only mutants can hear. Jack grabs Serena and threatens to snap her neck unless Bashir fixes the sound. And Bashir's like, well, I was going to, but now I can't because I'd be negotiating with terrorists. But no, he calls Chief O'Brien during the commercial break and then threatens to call him back and tell him that the sound went away if Jack doesn't let Serena go. So he does.
Yeah, I mean, once again, Chief O'Brien is the only engineer on the entire station.
Right.
Apparently. But it is an interesting, like, cut to commercial break and you cut back and she's still being held in, like, attempted murder position. And he's like, I called Chief O'Brien. Like,
right. It's like, did he go out of the room to call Chief O'Brien? Why does he have to say that?
Yeah. And I'm just like, maybe you should have been like, okay, let her go and I'll call Chief O'Brien. Also,
yeah, that would have been the more logical sequence of events.
If this guy is like legit willing to murder people on like any small thing that annoys him, I really don't think that he should be allowed to roam freely with these other people. Right?
I think Bashir just must have read about him. It's like he may threaten violence, but he never actually does violent stuff, so don't worry about it. So yeah, the chief shows up with a tricorder and a holster on his hip, making me wonder if he was wearing that to dinner the whole time.
I certainly hope so.
And then the chief gets to work fixing the noise with the help of Patrick, who says the plasma flow was out of sync. So if you knew that, why didn't you just say that to begin with?
Yeah, exactly.
And instead of hacking the comms, just hack into the plasma flow thing and fix that. But whatever, they're once again, these are institutionalized people, so
yeah.
So the chief gets the plasma flow fixed just in time for them all to watch Golda Meir's big speech on TV.
He has become leader of the Cardassian Union.
Yep.
Who would have thought?
Yep. And I was thinking about this. This actually makes perfect sense, because your old puppet went crazy and ran away. Who's the best person to replace him? The puppet of the puppet.
Interesting point. Yeah, okay.
So,
also, he's like the only Cardassian actor that we have left that we already knew, so...
I mean, we'd have to introduce that guy from the the dad of Rugal or whatever, the biting Cardassian.
Oh, yeah.
We'd have to bring him back or something, or just introduce a totally new guy. But I was totally like, this is exactly the thing that the Dominion would do. They'd just be like, okay, you are now the ruler of Cardassia.
Yeah. I 100% believe that like they're asking the female changeling like, okay, what now? Since you guys are technically in charge, and she's just like, I don't know, that guy. Like,
Right.
why do I care?
It's like, but I'm a complete political unknown, and like 2 weeks ago, I was like this low-ranking officer. It's like, who cares?
Just do it, or pick somebody else. I don't even care.
Right. We have some good speechwriters. We'll take care of it. Damar gives this grand speech about seeking peace and wanting to enter negotiations with the Federation, and the mutants all watch with interest. They are somehow able to read Damar's body language or the tone of his voice or something to deduce what's going on with Damar, Dukat, Zial, Wayun, etc.
I mean,
And Bashir's impressed.
He's really just standing there, not doing that much body language, I feel like. So it is pretty impressive, I guess.
Yeah, that's how genius these guys are. But yeah, Bashir is impressed, especially with how focused and collaborative they all became. And I get the impression they don't get to watch a lot of TV at the Institute.
Yeah, the ladies in charge of them is like, nah, screens are not good for my people, so...
Bashir gives them all he has about the Dominion to feed their bottomless curiosity, but they apparently still want more. So I'm just like, well, have they seen Game of Thrones? Maybe you could just give them your Netflix password.
But that wouldn't allow Bashir to, like, use this to his advantage.
True. But Bashir gets what he wants when Sisko announces that Damar and Wayun are coming to the station for peace negotiations, and the whole thing is going to be recorded so anyone can watch. So this will provide a few more hours of material for these people.
And Bashir's like, sweet, when he finds out that like they're coming, and then he's like, oh.
And I like how Sisko wasn't involved in this conversation at all. So in his point of view, he's like, and the whole thing's going to be recorded. And Bashir's like, awesome, and runs out. And he's just like, okay, whatever's going on there.
Yeah, he knows better than to ask at this point.
Right. He knows better than to ask anybody anything. He's just like, I don't want to know.
Bashir's doing something weird again. Maybe it's like one of his holodeck things. I don't know. During Damar's speech, he references William Shakespeare's Henry IV, Part 2, Uneasy Lies the Head That Wears the Crown, and also Macbeth. Methought I heard a voice cry, sleep no more. Damar does murder sleep.
Right. Jack quotes those things.
Yeah.
Not Damar.
Maybe Damar too. Why not?
Yeah, well, I didn't hear the whole speech. Maybe Jack was just quoting. So he said, uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. I don't know. So Damar and Wayun show up, and Kira meets them for the usual airlock, light verbal sparring.
I'm loath to agree with Damar on anything, really, but she's really going out of her way to immediately, first second they step in the airlock, try and derail the peace negotiations. She's just like, yeah, you better not be nice to Captain Sisko. He's not in the mood for your crap. And Damar's like, well, we're here for peace talks. He should get in the mood to be nice.
Right. Like, then we cut to negotiations in progress, where Damar and Wayun pitch the plan that everybody just keeps the stuff that they've already taken and call it a day. And Wayun claims this will benefit the Federation more than the Dominion. But as they talk, Patrick wanders over and stands right next to Damar. And then Jack calls freeze program from off screen, and we see that we've been watching a holo recording this whole time.
Oh my gosh. What a twist.
So apparently there are holo projectors in this bunk room.
Yeah, why not?
And I'd also like to point out, this is the same kind of not really wardroom set looking thing that we saw before Worf's bachelor party. So I don't know if the stage for the wardroom is being used for something or what, but I don't know. Also, those are clearly just regular office chairs with some sci-fi looking stuff put on the wheels.
No, they're super advanced science chairs.
Right. So Jack asks the computer for playback in native language mode. And we hear Wayun give his same spiel in Dominionese. Also, this time, instead of threading his fingers together like he did when he was speaking English, Wayun finishes the speech by steepling his fingers, fingertip to fingertip, which is the position he's in when Jack freezes the playback again. But then we cut to a wide shot where Wayun's fingers are interlaced once again. So, I caught you, editor.
No, you don't understand that, like, the hand movements are part of the Vorta language. And so when they translate it has to be slightly different.
All right, problem solved.
Yep.
That still doesn't explain how when from shot to shot it just switches from. I guess he changed it back to like translate mode. Okay,
yeah. Once he was done with that scene, he undid native language mode.
Okay, got it. Yeah, and also Jack is like, "Aha! I caught you, Wayun." He used a specific phrasing, passive voice transitive, that is only used in Dominionese to make requests, implying that he expects to get something from the deal. So I'm not quite sure about the logic of this, unless they're trying to say that Wayun speaks English and is aware of how the universal translators will translate the phrase, and then for some reason deliberately uses the passive voice transitive instead of just like, being more deceptive than that. I mean, it is the kind of shady stuff Wayun might try, but
yeah, I don't know. It's going deep. Maybe.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah, like maybe he did that so like later when they get what they want, he can be like, "What are you? I totally used the passive voice transitive when I asked for that. You didn't pick up on that." Or also maybe he just slipped up and lucked out that the universal translator covered for him. We don't know.
No, he knows all the details of how the universal translator translates Dominionese into Federation standard or whatever.
Right. It's like, hey, do you have a standard Cardassian universal translator like the ones we'll be using on Deep Space Nine? I want to practice some stuff on it. But Patrick notices a much more useful clue, which is that they must want the Cabrel system because they keep avoiding it with their eyes. And Lauren points out they must want it bad because they're giving up some valuable Mizanite deposits that could keep their shipyards running for years.
So Mizanite is good for shipyards. Got it.
Yeah. I mean, it couldn't be that they're just expecting peace and won't need to build any ships. I don't know. Jack says that's typical Dominion strategy. Take the long view, making short-term sacrifices for bigger gains down the road. Lauren rattles off the resources in the Cabrel system. We got protozoids, trinucleic fungi, so I guess like they have 3 nucleuses.
Sure.
There's some cormalline there. Everybody loves cormalline, but I mean, come on, it's no Mizanite. And then Jack and Lauren go back and forth trying to figure it out, but Bashir notices Serena sheepishly holding a pad, and it turns out she's cracked it. Bashir presents the findings to Cisco. Trinucleic fungus can be used to make Ketracel white. So those 3 nucleuses, like they do something, and then Ketracel white.
Yeah, and then it becomes Ketracel white. Exactly. Right. The thing that we can't replicate, like we know exactly how to make it though. So
right, we've analyzed it. And,
yeah.
So they could do this. They could keep the millions of Alpha Quadrant Jem'Hadar from dying horrible withdrawal deaths. After going into kill rampage mode first, of course, which will probably be fun for whatever civilians happen to be nearby.
But they'll probably be Cardassian civilians, so...
Right, so who cares? But Bashir says we should still make the deal so that we don't force their hand, and they'd have to attack. But then we should get to work negotiating with the Romulans to get them on our side before hostilities inevitably resume. Bashir explains the analysis by handing Cisco, like, 50 pads.
Here you go. And, like, Cisco has no time to read any of these, but Bashir just expects him to be on board.
Why all these separate aspects of essentially the same analysis need to be on a bunch of different pads, I don't know. Cisco's willing to listen. Bashir begins explaining that they use a form of statistical analysis that gets more accurate the further into the future you go. So that's neat.
How that's been proven, but is not used all the time, if in fact true.
Right.
I mean, I guess maybe they just invented it, but if they just invented it, there's no way that it could have been you couldn't have tested it for accuracy.
And even if you did test it, you just didn't go into the future far enough. But it's very reminiscent of the, was it Psychohistory from the Foundation series?
Oh, well, I mean, there is a note in here that this storyline is based on the Foundation trilogy. Asimov based his work on issues raised in Edward Gibbon's The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, and the basic plot involves a scientist who develops a branch of mathematics known as psychohistory, where he calculates that galactic civilization is doomed, leading to 30,000 years of darkness and barbarism. Terrified of this prospect, he takes action to attempt to minimize the oncoming Dark Age to only 1,000 years, but his plan fails to foresee the actions of a single individual that could render his predictions invalid.
Yep, the mule, who is a mutant.
I've never read it, so I just not only spoiled it for all of you people, but spoiled it for myself as well. It says that the psychohistory is based upon mass action, which I had to then look up. In sociology, that refers to a situation where numerous people behave simultaneously in a similar way, but individually and without coordination. For example, at any given moment, many thousands of people are shopping without any coordination between themselves. They are nonetheless performing the same action.
Huh. Sure.
So a bank run, for example, is a mass action with sweeping implications.
Yeah.
So that's what it points out about. So that's somehow the source for psychohistory. It can only predict the future when dealing with large groups, predicting trends in large masses of people, which is why Selden is unable to take into account the actions of individuals.
Right. Well, I thought the thing was that because this guy gets born who basically has mind control powers, and he quickly basically uses those powers to take over the entire universe or galaxy or whatever. And they're like, he could have never foreseen that, like, this genetic abnormality could have happened.
He takes over the galaxy and calls himself the Mule? That seems like, come up with a better name.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what he is called.
Yes, it says in here that a character called the Mule has psychic abilities and so on.
Yeah. But luckily, there's a second foundation of people who also happen to have psychic powers somehow, and they are able to defeat the Mule.
Oh, good.
If I recall correctly. But it has been a while since I read those books.
Also, more spoilers for you guys out there.
Right. We got to spoil this as much as possible.
The thing is, I don't get... I mean, by the end of the episode, we've taught Bashir the valuable lesson that these predictive models are not completely accurate. But I'm just like... The smallest test, like, let's go back in time like a month from your perspective.
Oh, yeah.
Could you possibly have predicted that the wormhole aliens were going to make the entire fleet of Jem'Hadar disappear? Like, there's no way that with the evidence you had, you could have called that. So just in the last month, like, if you tried to make those same predictions, they would have been thrown wildly off. So I do not understand how you can possibly think, oh yeah, we are completely accurate right now. We know all of the variables.
Yeah, or just like give them a database of stuff from 5 generations ago and say, okay, use this data set to now extrapolate our current situation and like prove that it works or whatever.
Yeah, do something to prove that this works, because I'm not seeing any evidence here. And the funniest thing to me is, like, within his first explanation to Sisko, we already see, like, the cracks in this, because he's like, you know, we'll be under Dominion rule for 1,000 years, and then a plucky resistance will start up on Earth and do this. And I'm like, but we've already heard Wei Yun be like, we're going to exterminate Earth because that's where the resistance will begin. So I'm like, so it's already, like, I mean, you don't know that because you didn't hear him say that, but we already know that this is completely wrong.
Right. Although he doesn't explain that to Sisko till later.
Oh, okay.
Because for now, he's just giving him the we should stall and make peace with the Romulans type thing. Okay. But yeah, so Sisko is impressed enough to pass the findings on to Starfleet intelligence, and Bashir brings a bottle of champagne to the mutants to celebrate. Lauren wants music, a waltz, so the computer starts playing the Blue Danube, which, come on, computer, you can be a little bit more creative than that.
The music, I like the note in here, the music played at the, quote, party, is Johann Strauss the Younger's An der schönen blauen Donau, more commonly known as the Blue Danube.
Right.
It will later be featured in the Voyager episode Renaissance Man.
Oh, what a connection.
But the dance sequence was originally supposed to be far more elaborate than is in the final episode, and was to include a lengthy crane shot. but neither Alexander Siddig nor Hillary Shepard Turner were able to dance properly, and in the end, that shot was scrapped.
Huh.
So,
I mean, were they supposed to be doing? What were they supposed to be doing? Like some crazy tap dancing or something?
I don't know. Siddig, I guess, is not a triple threat. He's not like sing, dance, act. He can't do the dancing, so.
Yeah, Lauren starts dancing with Bashir. Patrick dances with himself. Jack tries to ask Serena, but she doesn't want to, so he just cuts in with Lauren instead. Chief O'Brien shows up to replace the power coupling, but he doesn't want to wear the party hat that Patrick gives him, so Patrick starts crying. Then the mutants go into analysis mode and deduce that Miles is jealous of all the time that Julian is spending with the mutants, and he wants to play. Also, there's nothing wrong with the power coupling. So Bashir and O'Brien go to Quark's for some darts. Bashir reveals that the mutants like the Chief because they find him uncomplicated.
Yeah, I don't know why you thought this was going to go over well.
Right. Chief O'Brien does not take that as a compliment. Bashir wonders if they can get the mutants all jobs as advisors for Starfleet intelligence. And then O'Brien hits a lucky shot and says, the good thing about being uncomplicated is that sometimes you can defy people's expectations.
I mean, not that Bashir was the best on social skills in the majority of the series, but it really seems like hanging around these guys for a little bit just like completely torpedoes his ability to like read the room in any way, where he's like, you're so uncomplicated, Chief. Like just what clearly anyone would take as an insult, and he acts like the Chief should be flattered by this.
Yeah, they are clearly rubbing off on him, especially like later when he just goes on a full-on like Jack style like rant.
Yeah.
So later, Bashir goes to the mutants to tell them that Starfleet liked their analysis and has agreed to give them access to classified intelligence. But they are not happy. They have new, not optimistic projections.
But shouldn't this classified intelligence change these projections? Because these are things variables you did not know before?
Well, you see, we have gotten new data that Starfleet Command does stuff like handing out classified intelligence to a bunch of institutionalized head cases.
Okay, yeah, fair.
And this does not bode well. But Bashir reviews their analysis and he can't find a flaw. The war is hopeless, and the Federation has no choice but to surrender. So this is where he takes these findings back to Sisko and lays it all out. If they keep fighting, 900 billion with a B people will die, and they'll still lose the war. If they surrender, there will be 5 generations of Dominion rule, and then a rebellion will start on Earth, and they will overthrow the Dominion and found a new, better, stronger, even woker federation, the likes of which even Bernie Sanders couldn't conceive of.
Oh man, even Bernie?
See, yeah, I can get political too. That's right. He would be like, "Whoa, this is too woke. Can't do it."
When Bernie says it's too woke, then you might need to step back.
There's too little income inequality. It's too much free access to education. We just can't be having any of this. But as you pointed out, Weyoun has already anticipated this eventuality. But yeah, Sisko doesn't like it. He doesn't want to surrender to the Dominion based on some statistical probabilities. He said the thing. He'd rather put up a fight.
I do like that on some level, both Sisko and O'Brien are like, I mean, even if we are going to lose, like, I don't want to give up. That sucks.
Right.
Like, there's just like this little petulant, like, no, only losers give up.
Right. Bashir walks gloomily through the promenade for a while. Then he meets O'Brien at Quark's and shows him the findings. O'Brien, as you said, is also not a fan of surrender. Bashir is like, well, maybe you just don't understand the analysis because you're too dumb. And O'Brien brings up the very important point of just because you're smarter than me, how can we be sure that you're as smart as you think you are?
Yep.
Bashir goes to play some Dabo to prove the point that the house always wins and there's no hope. But Quark comes over and counters that everybody knows that the dice are loaded, but everybody rolls with their fingers crossed. But right on cue, Bashir loses his bet, and then he runs out of the bar ranting like Jack about how everybody's dead.
We're all gonna die.
And then I assume Morn just looks up and he's like, yep, been there, buddy.
I mean, Wasn't like there was a whole thing in that one episode where Quark said that they were going to lose to the Dominion, and Morn went insane and hit him with a chair and ran out naked, screaming onto the promenade. So yeah, it's like
that's what I'm saying.
Either Morn has gotten more chill since then, or he doesn't trust Bashir's analysis as much as Quark's.
Yeah, well, Morn is on Zoloft now, so he's better.
Well, yeah, there you
go. Right.
As long as he got the help he needed, that's the important thing.
Yeah. As expected, Starfleet does not want to surrender. So Jack pitches... Yeah, I can't believe it. So Jack pitches a plan to save those 900 billion lives. Let's just give the Dominion the classified intelligence that Starfleet gave us, and that we never even looked at to factor into our projections. But Bashir doesn't want to do that. It's not up to just one person to make such a huge decision. So Jack just punches Bashir, and in typical Bashir fashion, he goes out, just lights out after one punch from this skinny, crazy person.
I mean, he's in an institute 24/7. Maybe he works out in the yard a lot.
Yeah.
Pumping iron.
Yep. Meanwhile, Damar is stressed out about the negotiations. I guess Cisco has been stalling and has not accepted their proposal for whatever.
Yeah, I mean, apparently, as far as we know at this point, the real thing is just Cabral. So I keep imagining Cisco, offering them better and better deals for them, but still keeping Cabral, off the table. And they're just like, damn it, we're making no progress.
It's like, we really do kind of have our eye on that Cormeline. How about we trade you that for the Mizanite? It's like, But Weyoun has gotten a message from presumably Jack, and things may be looking up. So Bashir comes to, tied to a chair, being guarded by Serena. So the genius mutants have come up with the plan of sending off their 3 most able people to deliver a single pad full of intelligence they could have just emailed.
Yeah, seriously.
And left the catatonic person on guard duty.
I don't know that she's intended to be a guard so much as she's not going along with the plan, so they just leave.
Right. They're like, hey, we're going to go. Want to come with us? And she's just like... And they're like, yeah, those ropes will hold, though.
So apparently in the original version of the episode, she got some lines in this scene specifically, where it was she says 1 or 2 lines when she lets Bashir go or whatever, but they got cut for time.
Oh, but yeah, after seeing them take this course of action, I'm suddenly not worried about their predictions.
This will work for sure. Right. We'll meet the guys in a closet and give them this pad, and that'll solve everything.
Bashir will stay tied up. Nothing could go wrong. Nothing could possibly go wrong. Bashir talks Serena into untying him by pointing out that Jack will go to prison and she'll never see him again, and he knows how much she's in love with Jack. So he gets untied, he's able to grab some security and intercept Jack and company before they hand over the pad. Meanwhile, Damar and Weyoun are hiding out in a cargo bay, while Damar complains that this is a ridiculous thing for the leader of Cardassia to be doing. Weyoun says, okay, for the millionth time, you are a puppet. But yes, in hindsight, you might be a little too high profile to be sneaking around the station like this.
But I do love how, into this cloak and dagger bit Weyoun is.
Right.
He's just, all here for the secret meetings in the back rooms.
He's like, oh, this is so exciting. He's like, come on, Damar, let's go.
Hopefully, I mean, it's not like he even has anything to legitimize this message she received. He got a random message from an anonymous person saying, meet me in a closet. And he's like, let's do it. So it's good to know that you could probably mug him if you were so inclined, and he will happily go to an isolated out of the way area for you and let you beat him up. He didn't even bring any Jem'Hadar to guard. It's just
yeah,
it's great.
So the door to the cargo bay opens, but instead of Jack, it's Odo, who has the line of the episode, yes, I know I honor you with my presence. Damar and Weyoun play dumb with varying degrees of persuasiveness, but Odo curtly tells them they're not coming, just leave.
It makes me wonder if, was there a moment there where Weyoun was like, oh my gosh, is Odo the one who wanted to meet me in the closet? This is awesome.
I mean, I guess that would be kind of a conclusion you could jump to. It's like, oh, Odo is turning to our side.
Yeah. Or Odo just wants an illicit rendezvous with me in a closet.
Right?
Either way.
It's like, can you get me some cocaine? Luckily, Captain Sisko has decided not to press charges against the mutants, and that's pretty lucky, I say.
I mean, that's real big of him to maybe too big of him, honestly. Like, maybe a little charges would be appropriate.
Yeah, they get to go home to the Institute, that wonderful sounding place.
Oh.
Jack is mad that Bashir ratted them and doomed 900 billion people, but Bashir counters that if you couldn't even predict what Serena was going to do, what makes you think you can predict how the war will turn out?
It's like, Serena, like, you spend so much time with her, and you couldn't even predict, like, what she would do. So yeah, it's a good call.
Yeah. Later, Chief O'Brien finds Bashir sulking in Quarks, and he tells him it must have been a difficult decision whether to turn in his friends. But Bashir says he's a Starfleet officer and it was a no-brainer. And O'Brien finds the silver lining. People have gotten way too complacent about the Dominion, and the mutants have helped shake them out of that.
I never saw that anyone was complacent about the Dominion. Like, yes, we had a wedding. I'm so sorry if you're like, this is war, no weddings. Like, no one has felt complacent about the Dominion in, like, the 2 episodes since you guys took the station back in a giant battle.
Maybe that's just the way O'Brien sees it. He's like, wait, are we really doing this dumb Klingon bachelor party thing? So Bashir goes to play another game of Dabo, and wouldn't you know it, this time he wins big, much to Quark's annoyance. Bashir's about to take his winnings off and go bang the first Dabo girl who will have him, but he gets a call from O'Brien that the mutants want to say goodbye before they leave. So Bashir goes to see them one last time, and he gets a really inappropriate goodbye kiss from Lauren, and then lies to Patrick that he'll come visit someday at the Institute. And then at the end, Jack asks him if they find a way to beat the Dominion, will he listen? And he's like, no. The end.
I mean, given how your last plans have worked out, Jack, if you found a way to beat the Dominion, I don't think it would work. So
I've got it. We should blow up Deep Space Nine. It's like, oh, okay.
That'll do it. Okay, random other notes. The episode originated in Ira Stephen Bear's desire to probe deeper into Bashir's genetic enhancements. Not his abilities, per se, but the implications of those abilities. He says, I was never totally comfortable with our discovery of Julian's genetic engineering. It was one of those revelations that didn't seem quite authentic to me. We had to work backward to get it, so I felt we needed to do something to help that idea along. So, I mean, yeah.
So he took this idea that originally did not involve genetically engineered people and attached that desire to this.
No, I think just like the genesis.
Just in general, he wanted that.
Yeah, he's like, we need to address this more, and so let's do an episode that does that.
But they said the original idea was for just a team of Starfleet intelligence people.
They were genetically engineered people who had been recruited.
Oh, they were genetically engineered. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. I missed that part.
This is one of Alexander Siddig's favorite episodes. He says, people ask, was that a comedy? A drama? Well, Statistical Probabilities was like that. Not quite one thing or another. The humor came out of the misery and angst captured by those wonderful actors. And I enjoyed the fact that Bashir served as kind of a pinball throughout the show. He just battered about.
All right.
Yeah, okay, if you say so, man.
I love it when my character is just kind of aimless and bounces around.
He just goes where other people tell him to go, and it's great.
He's easily persuaded by whoever he's talking to at that moment.
And then Jeffrey Combs talks about the scene where he had to speak in the Vorta language. And he says, that was very strange. I had to work I had to work hard, too, for that very tiny little bit. It was very hard to speak a language that's totally made up, and yet keep the cadence and sensibility of an actual line in English. Because what they did is they played it once in English, then they replayed it in Vortanese or whatever, and I really had to concentrate to get the way I worded it. They gave me syllabic words, and it was up to me to break it down into the phraseology that I did. It's interesting how the brain works. I really, really had to hang in there and run it by rote. It's easy to memorize words and phrases and strings of thought when it's your native language, but when it's a nonsensical group of syllables, it takes a lot more brain juice to make it seem very easy and conversational. So,
well, I mean, I thought compared to a lot of alien language speaking we see in Star Trek, he did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I thought he did a fine job of it. So it's all that brain juice he squeezed into there.
Yeah.
So nicely done, Jeffrey Combs. He always brings it.
I happened to be at the library like yesterday.
Did you see Jeffrey Combs there?
I did not see Jeffrey Combs, but I did just happen to see sitting on a shelf a book by the guy who created all the languages for Game of Thrones.
Oh.
And it's called like The Art of Creating Languages or something. I like opened it to the first page. He's like, okay, it's like, I opened the Game of Thrones books and there are like 46 Dothraki words in all the books. And so from that I had to extrapolate out like a whole language with like its own like grammar and all this stuff. I was like, oh.
Man, that's dedication.
I almost checked that book out, but I was like, I don't want to bother. You check a book out, you always have to go return it.
Yeah. It's a hassle having to go back to the library.
Yeah.
He could have just made it up whole and not even worried about trying to match it to the books because only a few hardcore fans would notice or care. So, but it's impressive that he's like, no, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna start here and build.
I'm sure someone appreciates it.
Someone, yeah, not me necessarily, but somebody.
Yeah.
There's one last note in here. Siddig also admires the episode for its political engagement. The episode touched on a couple of political issues in terms of... Okay, so I'm going to pause. What political issues do you feel this episode touched on? Well, let's see if you feel the same way as him.
People having an unfair advantage, so... I don't know, maybe something about affirmative action or I don't know.
He says, in terms of whether or not you can incarcerate people like this, I think the commentary that came out of Bashir's mouth was right and called attention to the fact that double standards happen in society. We put good people away, like the Japanese Americans in internment camps during World War II. The group in this episode seemed like lovely people, and Bashir showed some vulnerability in fact that he understood their plight. They might not have been misfits if they'd not been put away for such a long time.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like comparing it to like the Japanese internment is a little bit of a stretch, but...
Yeah, it's honestly a little bit insensitive, I feel like, but...
I mean, some people just do need like hospitalization or institutionalization, but
I mean, Serena didn't seem like she's going to be living on her own.
Yeah,
she probably needed help. Patrick, I don't know, he might be able to live on his own, but I don't think he'd do well.
Yeah,
Lauren, as you pointed out, doesn't actually. We never see anything that's like wrong with her necessarily. She's coming on to every guy, but that's a thing that some people do. So,
I think Lauren is just so chill that she just wound up at the Institute one day and was like, oh yeah, this place isn't bad. And is just
why not?
Out there.
Free meals. Jack might have some trouble on the outside with his threatening to murder people over every little thing that annoys him. So he probably needs to be in there.
I've definitely known plenty of people who are like 90% of their way to Jack. So
yeah, well, and
I'm not saying that they necessarily should be free and walking around, but
see, but that's the thing. It's like most of the time, Jack is like he's a little much, but you're like, this is a guy who could live on his own probably. Sure. But then there is that like 10% of the time where it's like, okay, no, you
right.
Something wrong with you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, we can jump into reviews. How do you feel about Statistical Probabilities, the episode, not the concept?
Not the concept. I love the concept.
Right.
Okay. Actually, I like this episode a lot.
Uh-huh.
This is one of those where I'm not even... We've pointed out lots of... Like, we've nitpicked a lot. Did we have a nitpick of the week?
I nitpicked, but I feel like the fact that these are crazy people kind of
Yeah.
excuses you from a lot of nitpicks.
It covers a lot of sins when you're like, well, but they're crazy though. So yeah, that's fair.
Right.
There's a lot of holes that you could poke in this story.
Sure.
There's a lot of things that maybe could have been done a little bit better, but overall, I find it to be a fun episode. Like Bashir goes a little bit overboard in suggesting that they surrender to the Dominion.
Uh-huh.
But on some level, like, for one thing, he's been spending too much time with these people, as we established. And he suddenly just trusts in math way more than I feel like we've ever seen him be like, put math over feelings, or like, he's never been this in love with math before. It seems weird to me. But you know, just make the allowance for that. It's just, these characters are fun. I like that we're coming back and keeping contact with our overarching Dominion story. We're playing into that as we try to progress it. It's like, oh, the Dominion's pulled back. What are they up to now? Where they're going to try to they're going to pull the Dominion thing where they think long term, and they're going to try to pull one over on us by manipulating the fact that the Federation wants peace. Like, Damar has his big speech like, I call on the Federation to also be interested in peace, when everybody knows if you propose peace to the Federation, they're gonna be like, yeah, let's get some of that peace. So it's like, you could have just called. You didn't have to make the big speech. But so the Dominion is playing this game, and they're actually playing it pretty well. They just didn't anticipate which actually speaks even further to, you can't predict this stuff, because like, the Federation would have agreed to this treaty if not for the analysis done by you guys. So just in observing what was happening, you've already changed it from what your prediction would have been.
That's true.
Otherwise. So yeah, anyway, once again, it's easy to poke holes in it, but overall, It's just so fun that it doesn't elevate to like that captain level, because it's not transcending anything, but it is so fun. Like, this is an episode that I will watch repeatedly and enjoy every time. Yeah. So it's like a solid Commander for me.
Nice. Yeah. It's well, first of all, it's a pretty classic episode. I think this is one of my like most remembered episodes in the whole series.
Yep.
Even though, I probably haven't seen it in like, 10, 15 years, whatever. Yeah, and it has kind of a disadvantage for me in that I just do not like Dr. Bashir genetic engineer storyline.
Yeah.
And just all the stuff that goes along with it. But like you said, it's just a really fun episode, and I think it's largely elevated by the performances of all the people, all the guest actors.
Yeah, they're all doing a great job. We didn't really talk about that, but like, they all really, even Serena, who's acting by doing nothing most of the time, she's really doing it well. She
put that switch in her brain, and it's working.
That's dedication.
And we have Jeffrey Combs too, so
yeah,
we're hanging out with a bunch of really fun people this week, and I mean, the main thematic thing I get out of it is, so I saw a thing not too long ago about it's the question of, if you ever met God, how could he ever possibly prove to you that he was God and not just a vastly more powerful and more knowledgeable being?
Okay.
Like, how would you know he's not just like the guy from Star Trek 5 or whatever?
Sure.
Until he asks you for a starship.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if he doesn't need a starship, then we're there.
Right. But, it's also just like, if someone has just a much higher intellect than you, how can you ever trust them? Because you have no way to verify or check on like what they're telling you. So, and on the flip side, if you are like the smartest person in every room, then how can you know that you're as smart as you think you are? So, I thought that was a kind of a cool little lesson for Bashir to learn, even though I think the episode danced around it a little bit, but it was pretty much there. Mainly, he learned the important lesson that you should always gamble. So
that was like Quark is happy with that,
right? But yeah, overall, it's a really fun episode. Definitely not a captain. I think if we didn't have those great performances, it might be lower for me. But I'm also going to give it a pretty solid commander.
Nice.
As for the title, Statistical Probabilities, I gotta say it kind of works. Because it's like the statistical probabilities that you would wind up as Bashir versus these people, or the probabilities of predicting the future or whatever. I don't know. It's at least relevant, I think.
Yeah.
Which is not, we don't always get that, so.
Yeah, and for me, it's memorable, and maybe it really is more that, like you said, this is an episode that you remember that sticks out. And
yeah.
But like, if you say statistical probabilities, I know what episode you're talking about. I know that it's that one. So,
yeah. And even if you don't remember that, you could probably piece it together pretty fast. So
yeah. So I think it fits. I think it's memorable, and it's like marginally clever.
Yeah, it's a good medium amount of clever where it's not like it touches on like the whole thing of the episode, but they're
not getting overly cute, like some of them.
Yeah, so not a bad title this week.
Yeah, no, this may be one of my higher level titles, honestly.
Yeah,
in terms of our 3 criteria.
Yeah. So, any final stuff?
Well, I mean, it's a shame that we'll never see these characters again. There was so much potential for more stuff that they could do.
They should have become series regulars.
Really, it'd be funny to just like every once in a while, like they shoot Bashir an email that's like, "Hey, try this in the War with the Dominion," and Bashir's like, "Hey, Captain, can we do this?" Like, you could have some fun in there.
What these guys really need is their own Lone Gunman style spinoff.
Oh, that would be interesting.
That would be a great Star Trek show.
Lone Gunman was such a popular spinoff.
Right.
Yeah.
I liked it. I mean, I was like 16 years old or whatever, but and it creepily predicted 9/11. But
yeah, also true.
I remember it's like, this is the thing that happened on Lone Gunman. Anyway, but yeah, I guess we'll wrap it up there. So, that is our discussion of statistical probabilities. Thank you for listening. If you liked that episode, maybe you'll like our discussion of, let's see, what's a good one? What's that one where Bashir solved the plague or whatever?
Oh, I almost said outbreak, but that's not what it was. The Quickening. That's what it was.
The Quickening. There we go. Or the one where he got zapped by the Lightning Hands alien.
When the Lethian got him? Don't do that one.
That was either Whispers or Distant Voices. I can never remember which is which.
I think that one's Distant Voices.
Okay. Okay, yeah. Whispers is the one where O'Brien is not really O'Brien.
Yeah.
I think.
That sounds right.
Anyway, check out our discussions of all those episodes.
Yeah, just all of them. It's the best Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast ever in the history of anything. So
yeah, just pick one at random. You can't go wrong. So, but yeah, you can find all that past episodes, maybe future episodes if you're listening in the future, wherever you're listening to this, unless I randomly deleted some for some reason. And if you want to leave us a comment that we'll see, you can go to the YouTube channel and do that.
Fletcher's political career is really going to take off, and he's going to have to go back and delete some of these episodes.
Right. It's like, I've said some awkward opinions about slavery at some point or something. But yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So I think we should have a slave class of drug addicted soldiers. Why can't our society head in that direction? But anyway, my name is Fletcher. About to say goodbye as Data.
I'm not associated with anything Fletcher just said.
We look forward to seeing you next week. But Just remember, you honor us with your presence.